Tiny Tina's Wonderlands has once again graced us with an incredible promo ahead of launch, and on the heels of its Game Awards showcase, I thought it was only right to slow it down and take a deep dive into what we learned. Hey there friends, it's Codiak here, welcome back to Legacy Gaming. Today, we're looking at 7 new things you might have missed about Gearbox's upcoming game, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. There's nothing better than a lightning-fast trailer, and Gearbox certainly has mastered that art when it comes to cutting a promo. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is about 3 months away from launch, and as expected, the team is dropping bits and pieces of new trailers and info every few weeks. But unless you really slow it down and take it frame by frame, it's very possible you might miss some of the most nuanced new details. I think it's safe to say playing as a custom character within the Borderlands sandbox is going to be pretty awesome. While we've seen a number of unique characters leading up to this point, this was the first time I really noticed how many possibilities there are going to be to mold the character to look the way you want. This is right in line with what the developers said in a recent interview where they talked about all of the customization options players would have, saying that it was overwhelming. We also got a taste of some new playable races, and again, this falls right in line with what the developers said in that same interview. I don't even know what to call some of these races, but they're different, and while humans and orcs are a thing, having something new and just out there always makes for more memorable experiences. It doesn't mean it's always good, but it leaves a lasting impression. With the custom characters, you might have also noticed some really badass looking armor, and truth be told, that's the first thing that really stood out to me when watching this trailer back the first few times. The Gearbox team must be having an absolute blast with the high fantasy theme, and honestly, it shows in the presentation of the weapons and more specifically, the armor. I said it in one of our first videos covering this game that when you give the artist the flexibility and freedom to go in a different direction, they get to tap into something completely new and different, and because the world of bunkers and badasses is so varied and dynamic, you can see the armor sets don't have to conform to 1 or 2 particular themes. They're all over the map. This is pretty impressive considering that armor hasn't really been a thing in any of the Borderlands games, and while skins were certainly present in Borderlands 3, this is another animal entirely. Nevertheless, it's awesome to see so many great looking armor sets, and I can't wait to see how they function and impact the gameplay. Since the second trailer, we knew that some new characters would be entering into focus with this game, but now we know exactly who they are. This very Rin looking fella is Valentine, a self-proclaimed gallant adventurer, and the other character, the robot Fret, is more of the slicey dicey variety and looks to be the muscle of the group. What really remains to be seen is why these characters are part of the adventure. We know we're playing a game of bunkers and badasses, but why are they there? Who are they really? And are they friend or foe? All questions I still have about their presence. We also got to look at some other characters like Fairy Brick, and I personally love this. Bringing back familiar Borderlands characters to Tiny Tina's Wonderlands just feels like the right move. They're recognizable, but given the fantasy nature of the game, you can really push their character in a completely different direction. Point in case, Fairy Brick. Introduced for the first time was also Paladin Mike, part of the Diamond Guard, Queen Butt Stallion's elite defenders. And yes, that sounds ridiculous saying, but it's the truth. It was just a quick glimpse of the character standing in front of the Queen's palace, but I have no doubt he'll play an integral part in the Wonderlands narrative. In terms of gameplay reveals, well, we saw a whole lot of quick, interesting clips, and I want to start by talking about some of the boss fights, big and small, that we saw in the mix. For the second time, we saw this big Leviathan cracking looking thing, and we can actually see Tiny Tina slam down the model on the table, basically introducing it into the world. It's pretty clear to me that this is going to be one of the major boss fights within the game. It's been showcased multiple times, and the creature is just massive, so how could it not be? It also looks like a Naga Queen, at least that's what I'm going to call it for now, is going to be another boss players will have to come up against. She had a few voice lines, and we even got a glimpse of some of her minions, so I definitely think she'll be another big roadblock within the game. We also saw, and I can only presume, is mini-bosses. In the crypt area here, we saw a risen soldier tricked out with spiky armor, rising up from a tomb, and then in the very next scene, we saw Gearbox's take on a Cyclops with a hook hand that's thrown out and tries to grab players. It all happens very quick, and unless you slow it down, it's pretty easy to miss. All in all, I love boss fights, and I cannot wait to see what the bosses bring to the table in Wonderlands. While not a big part of the trailer, I did want to talk about one particular scene. I'm a sucker for any Honey, I Shrunk the Kid moments in games, and it looks like at some point during Wonderlands, while in first-person mode, we'll be shrunk down almost as if we were in a land of giants. It kind of makes sense given the fantasy nature of the game. Giants wouldn't be a stretch, but it doesn't actually look like there's anything here that's attacking us. This could be a neutral hub or safe zone, just something I wanted to point out and talk about because it's different than all of the other settings we've seen so far. During this particular section of the trailer, there is a rather pleasant voiceover talking about getting out there and adventuring, so I'm leaning more towards this is an okay, safe place that eventually we'll run across and be able to recoup, maybe change up some gear, something positive. Speaking of miniatures, I think we have to talk about the overworld. That's the board game view within the game. We actually talked about the cheese puff scene in the last video we put out, but now we actually get to see it in action. A cheese puff is blocking the game board, and Tina, on the fly, makes up some scenario that causes it to move out of the way. I want to remind you all that the developers said that this was linked to a dungeon quest, so I doubt it's as easy as just walking up and then it moves, but it's still fun to see in action. We also see two avatars on a small bluff walking towards a D20. I have to imagine this is some sort of loot scenario. We've seen characters in other trailers break apart dice for loot, but what exactly this is, it's hard to say. We saw one more shot from the overworld, two characters kicking down a bottle cap, creating some sort of ramp. My guess is this is some sort of shortcut that players can use to skip various parts of the overworld that they've already cleared. There's not much to go on here, they just kind of tap it and it falls down, but that's at least what it looks like to me. I think it's only fair that we end this video talking about some of the new weapons and spells that we saw during this trailer. We know that a variation of the procedural loot system made famous in Borderlands will be utilized for Wonderlands. With each new trailer, we get to see some of those in action. The one thing I really wanted to point out was the double fire spell right at the tail end of the trailer. Up until this point, we've seen one-handed spells and some wand attacks, but this is the first spellcast we've seen involving both hands. It sounds silly, like why does that matter? But it's those tiny details that help determine the actual gameplay, and this is definitely something different than we've seen before. All in all, the combination of guns, spells, melee attacks, and special abilities really looks to change up the Borderlands formula, and I, for one, am pumped. With each new trailer, we get a little bit more understanding of what the world of Wonderlands is going to be about, and while it's pretty clear the chaotic action of Borderlands is present in this high fantasy world, there's still plenty of this puzzle we still don't have details on. Nonetheless, if you're excited about this game and will be playing it on day one, do me a solid, hit that thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. Legacy Gaming will be going all in on Wonderlands, and we'd love to have as many people along for the ride as possible. We also invite you to join us on Discord. We'll be opening up a special section just for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, so if you're looking for a great community to interact with, check out the link in the description below. Finally, if you like everything we're doing here at Legacy Gaming and you'll want to support us even more, you can do so by becoming a member. For just a couple bucks, you're helping evolve the channel and take our community to that next level. Check out the join button below to learn more. My name is Codiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.